Most marriages don't lose trust because of one big moment. They lose it slowly when honesty stops feeling safe. Yeah. It's the slow fade. Shame tells us to protect ourselves, while love, unconditional love, invites us to move towards one another. Today, we want to talk about how trust is rebuilt, not by pressure, not by performance, but by creating an environment of safety where we live.
What started as a question, God, you created marriage, can you make it work? Soon became a statement, God, you created marriage, you can make it work. Thank you for joining us on the Christian Family Life podcast, where we get into the good, the bad, and the ugly in our marriage relationships and mine God's word to see what it has to say about it.
Welcome to the Christian Family Life podcast. Roland, along with my wife Tammy.
Hello.
And our great friends, Giraldo and Suzanne.
Yeah. You went with the legal names there.
Yes, yeah. Coming at you with our new setup.
Yeah.
Love it.
A little more comfortable.
Yeah.
A little more casual.
Actually, a lot more comfortable.
I got to work on my core so it doesn't show so much.
Yes.
Or suck it in, one or the other.
Oh, man.
Can't imagine how uncomfortable those stools were. So, I mean,
this
it's
is comfortable.
so much better.
So much.
Well, last week, and actually the 2 or 3 episodes even before that, we've parked on shame and hiding. The part that plays biblically, where it starts, Genesis 2, naked and unashamed, to Genesis 3, shame and hiding, to today, we really want to transition and talk about how to rebuild trust. I think this is a great place for young couples and premarital. We highlight cultivating trust and protecting it. Yeah. Because without the kind of conversation we're having of the perspective of just the weight that having trust in a relationship carries, we may find ourselves in figuring out, well, how do we rebuild? And sometimes we think that rebuilding is done by proving ourselves. Well, in a performance-based relationship, that's the way it is.
Yeah, that's how it is.
You're going to have to prove yourself. But it's really rebuilt by creating safety and feeling safe in the relationship. Tam, when that trust is broken in marriage, what's usually happening beneath the surface?
Well, fear.
Yeah.
Fear of an explosion from your spouse, having to really share some unprocessed feelings. You don't really know. You don't know what it's going to bring out in you. Just wanting to, and I think early on in marriage, I would say that was, we knew that being angry was sinful, or at least we thought it was, that sometimes we would call it righteous anger, but when we're angry at our spouse, we don't feel like it's right to share that. I think that, we do feel differently now. It's okay to share. It's, bottling it up is definitely not the way to go in a marriage, especially. Going along to get along, not wanting to bring up those things that, might even point back to something in childhood that, may be related to your father, and maybe, that part gets a little difficult to process, So what trust really is truth and safe presence equals trust. Trust is not certainty. It's emotional safety. You're not going to be reprimanded or shamed for thinking something. You can feel safe, and you can share your thoughts even if they're wrong. You can share them even if it's misunderstood, or if it's even if it's a misunderstanding that you have, you are in a safe place to share. One reason why we people go to counseling because they feel safe with that counselor. That counselor is going to bring out all the things that need to be talked about. And I do think that it's such a healthy thing that we process. And I think that we'd rather go to, a doctor, in that field in counseling, and we want them to help us process. But I think that we can have that in a marriage, in our marriages. When people don't feel safe, their minds spiral. And I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I just thought of this example. Have you ever been to a party? Now, Gio, you don't count because this is not applying to you. I'm really talking to Susie or Roland. I'm not talking to you either. But when you go into a party and you know only one person.
Yeah.
And that person's the host. So you can't really latch on to them. So like where your mind goes, like, what do these people think? They don't know who I am, first of all. And I did experience this recently where they didn't know who I was. And so the host I could tell she was like wanting to make sure that people knew who I was. And anyway, and there is that kind of that spiraling that happens when you don't feel you're like in a safe, you're not feeling a safe environment. For introverts, that is not a safe environment. For you guys, totally. It's your platform. It's your,
bring it on.
Yeah. Bring it on. Fear speeds us up and safety slows us down. So when I do love that too, I think fear of man comes into play when I think about that, when we just fear what people think of us. And, and so we can think of these verses in our minds like fear of man, just trust the Lord and all of these things, but we're very human. And so it's a constant struggle really when it comes to feeling trust, feeling safe with people. But in marriage, fear should not be a factor in your communication. You should be able to slow down. And we love to get up early enough in the morning so where we can start the day off and we're slowing down. We'd rather do that with a cup of coffee in the morning and just sometimes we process things, sometimes we're just quiet and we might, have conversations, but that slowing down is so important. And tone and facial expression and presence matter. If you feel rushed, again, going back to speeding up, you feel rushed, you feel like, this is like, like we need to be somewhere. And oftentimes it's church where we have to go or wherever it is that we need to go that things kind of come to the surface. So sometimes it's not. But facial expression and presence matter. So one thing that really, I've been listening to this book called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess by Dr. Carolyn Leaf. And she wrote the book, Switch On Your Brain. And she's, I mean, she might be a believer, but she's not coming from a faith perspective. But I find it so interesting the things that she has learned about the brain and being a psychologist. And she's got these different steps that she takes people through and different studies on people and how the brain is affected by different thoughts, toxic thoughts. One of the things that she has said is that we have veto power over our thoughts, which I thought is so interesting because that's biblical as well. We take each thought captive. But in the book, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess is how much safety affects the way we think. When we're anxious or afraid, we don't process clearly. When we feel safe, we can slow down and we can tell the truth.
Yeah.
So I feel safest telling the truth when I know I won't be rejected. I mean, don't we all? Gio, why does shame make honesty feel so risky?
I think it's because it's going to blow everything up. I think we're afraid. I think you mentioned that earlier, Tammy, the fear of if I'm honest, if I share, if I open up, if I'm being vulnerable, this is what's going to happen. Whether it's true or not, that's kind of how we're conditioned, right? Our minds are conditioned to think that way because I think that's what our culture has said. And so we feel much safer in this isolation. Like, I'll just keep it to myself. I'm not going to bring it up, which brings no healing in the process. It trains us to be self-protected. It trains us to kind of live in this place of hiding. And I think the fear of all that, of blowing up, looks at it from what our minds would equate it to, how the other person is going to react. What kind of, let's use the word punishment, for example. How are they going to punish me for the information that I'm going to share and being vulnerable? And it's not just anger. There's isolation from them themselves, from us. There's a defensiveness. This is more of a guy to a girl thing. It's if I'm honest with what I'm dealing with now, they're just going to want to fix it. They're not going to want to listen to me. So I'm not going to even tell them what it is. And so it really draws us away from what the goal is, which is to come together, the unity that is to be coming together. And when we create that space for each other in our resource to becoming one, we talk about the naked and unashamed position that we read in Genesis, where Adam and Eve were both naked and unashamed until sin entered the world, and then shame began the covering up. And so we talk about creating that environment within our home, which is on both sides, right? It's on the person having the confidence to share, but it's on the person receiving the information and the posture of how they're going to create a safe environment for those things to be said. And that presence from the person receiving the information creates, it really communicates a safety in that environment. Like the person that's sharing we've all been there when I want to say this, but I don't know if I say this, what's going to happen? They're going to get so mad. They're going to, whatever, fill in the blanks. And you're like, we do the juggling thing. And they were like, you know what? I'm not even going to bring it up. I'm just going to stay here. Well, that's one more step towards isolation. And it's a slow fade. Roland, you opened with that. I think of, is it Casting Crowns?
Yeah.
That sings that song. It's a slow fade. It doesn't happen overnight. And then here we are years later wondering why we're so alone. Why do we feel like we're navigating all of our junk by ourselves because we don't have anybody there to be with us? And so there's a great phrase that we talked about earlier. Truth heals only when it is met with presence instead of punishment. That's where the healing begins. The walking through this together to allow each other that space of being cared for, being loved, and being heard. Man, how many times do you feel you're not heard? And sometimes you feel that not because the other person is not listening, but because of not wanting to say anything because of the response of what the other person is going to share. And so shame isolates, right? That's what causes the isolation. Trust invites you into the conversation, and then safety sustains the relationship. I thought that was really powerful there, because we need to be invited by our spouse into the conversation. We need to be open and create a safe place so that it sustains beyond just the moment, right? Just in that moment of there. And so, practically, these are things that I think why people don't risk being honest. But how does that play out in marriage? I know that we've had some things that we've practiced on.
Yeah, I think if honesty costs the relationship, people stop being honest, right? If you know in your mind, if I say this, and honestly, you have to remember, perception is reality as well, right? So, and sometimes
the eye of the beholder.
Sometimes we project, so we have to be careful of that. But if I know ahead of time, if I share this, it's going to be responded with in this way, then I'm just not going to share it. And then we go back into all of the terms that we just talked about, isolation. And that isolation is shame's oxygen, right? It's like that shame is a fire. And I'm going to pull out a really old term here, the bellows, remember? I remember my parents had this when we had a fireplace up north. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it had this thing where you squeezed it together and it blew fire blew air on the fire, and it like what looked like it was going down and dying down to embers.
That was actual oxygen.
Oh yeah, you pumped that with the bellows.
For our community is during the Kahachina when we did the pig roast, but you just used a paper plate.
Yeah.
And did this. You know, you just waved the paper
whatever
plate.
it is,
Heat up those coals.
It's introducing oxygen back
That's
into
right.
the equation, and boom, the fire's back up.
That's right.
To
And-
the coals of shame.
Yes, coals of shame.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I think it's important to make sure we distinguish between two different ways that this shame can come about. I think today we're talking about that, what you guys have mentioned, the slow fade, the process, the actions and steps that you make, because there are relationships where there is a huge isolated incident where immediately trust was broken. And I think that's a different journey for repair.
Yeah.
But I think repair is always the goal if possible. And with God, all things are possible. So, but I think what we're talking about today is that slow, like almost like an erosion. And it's little by little. And it's honestly what I think it is. And it's not always intentional, but it's a failure to make the choices that bring health, to lean into even when it's uncomfortable, to have the conversation when you don't want to have the conversation, or when you want to say, I'm fine. I think sometimes you say that enough and you begin to believe it yourself. I'm fine. I'm just going to learn to live with this uncomfortableness because I don't want the potential repercussions. And so we stay busy, right? And so I'm going to list some things that none of them are bad or wrong. But if we use them to avoid coming together, then they're not going to lead to health. So you have your job. Nothing wrong with a job. Bible endorses work, right? But when you lean into your job and maybe you stay extra hours, or you go in early, or you bring work home so that you're able to avoid, and that's kind of what all of these are. You find hobbies, friends, your kids, your church. All of those are excellent things, but not when they come at the cost of health in your relationship, because we tend to we use that to avoid topics, and we just want to keep the peace. We just want to be nice. That was me for a very long time.
Yeah, I was going to say, Suze, that I remember, like now, today, the way the conversation goes is like this. I don't know, maybe you guys experience the same thing, where Susie will bring something up, speaking her heart, right? Mm-hmm. And I roll my eyes, or I sharply defend myself, or whatever it is. And today she's able to, back then it was more keep the peace. Today it's more like, see, when you do that, it doesn't allow me to really share with you what's on my heart immediately.
Yeah.
And it really causes me to take a pause and say, you're right. But this has been helpful because we've been through a lot of the 2B1 stuff ourselves. We teach it so much. God has been downloading in our hearts.
Also, there's 31 years of marriage, stuff that we're still learning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But this is what that makes me think of is you're at that place, which I wish, and we talked about this when we were having our meetings before the podcast. Man, why couldn't we have learned all this, have it all down 31 years ago
And
before it started?
and to still be learning.
Yeah.
The definition of insanity is to do the same thing and expect a different result. Yeah. So even as someone listens to this podcast and they hear things like presence, or they hear things like don't avoid, what comes to mind for me is how in conflict is sometimes where we got the most done around the house. Because it was easier to go and do those things than, Gio, like you said, hey, this is why we don't have the conversation when this happens. Yeah. And so I think we kind of come to this place where we identify what it's going to take to cultivate and in some cases rebuild trust, and then be committed as ever to that.
I think trust grows, right? And it grows when it's cultivated. Mm-hmm. And you cultivate trust through consistent safety. Not emotional intensity. Are there times for emotional intensity? Yeah. Yeah. But I don't think that's where trust is going to be tested.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're going to get to an emotionally intense state, make sure you have built that trust through consistent safety. And instead of always wanting to be the recipient of that and looking for if it's offered to you, be the first to offer it.
Yeah, that's good.
Be that for your spouse. And I know there's a tendency to say, but they don't do that for me. That's okay. For a time. Like do unto others. Like be for your spouse what you want them to be for you. You know, and so those ordinary conversations, it's not necessarily the big speeches and let's have a sit down, talk this thing out. There's times for those, but just ordinary conversation is where you're going to build that trust. And I think building or even rebuilding should always be the goal of the trust.
Yep. How trust is rebuilt. We should be staying present in each other's lives, that we are, even have those, I know that both of us, there's always things to do. I don't know. I think maybe at your house too, but
Yeah.
it's
less than your
constant
guys'.
struggle.
Empty nesters is different than having kids at home.
Yeah.
Completely.
Oh.
But they just begin to get different.
It's different, right? Yeah.
Well, and
One
Tammy
day
is a
it'll be
primary caregiver
Yeah.
for
Right.
her mom as well, who's doing well, but it still requires
Sure.
Well, it's
Absolutely.
from
being
Tammy.
mindful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot.
So staying present, taking those times where, sometimes leaving the house is best, for us. But just, and not rushing to fix. I think that's our tendency, is to, let's just fix this, and sometimes being quiet, letting safety do the work. And just being in each other's presence. I think that kids see that too. Our kids observe, whether they're adults and married and come into the house and visit and all that. They see that there's a safety cultivated within the marriage. I don't think I think a book can be written on how much the kids pick up on. I know I picked up on things as a child growing up. You can sense the atmosphere in a room. I think when you're a child, that you don't even process it then, maybe until later. But the memories, as we get older, isn't it funny that we think we remember a lot of the memories from childhood as we get older? And I think about my father when he passed, when he was like in those last few, well, really, I'd say the last year, just processing things that he went through as a kid, and just telling the stories, and it was so clear in his mind. And I think that that's always going to be the way it is. And sometimes just processing things, that you went through as you're living this out, your marriage, your faith, and
being curious in the process. I think we make too many assumptions of what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and our spouse, and we don't ask questions. We just, install our thoughts. And so I think asking questions is a big deal. Letting some people share their heart, their story, why they're where they're at, with that safety in mind, I think is healing. And I think you move the needle so much further. Instead of accusing your spouse because of your assumptions, to letting them really share what they're dealing with and giving them that freedom.
Yeah. Curiosity, right? Curiosity communicates safety. And so it's in the small responses. I think sometimes we want things to be so perfect that if we can't accomplish that, we just chuck it all. But the small steps toward repair. Trust comes back through hundreds of small moments.
yeah.
I think a big takeaway as we try to just wrap it all together is how important an environment is. And when it's the right kind of environment, it's an environment that we want to step into. And it's an environment we want to stay in. We can think about our own actions. I think it's really important here, when we consider what cultivating trust looks like, is what is my role? In my case, what's my role as a husband? What am I doing as a husband, as a friend, as a confidant, as a lover to my wife is in an environment that she wants to be in. And vice versa for the wife to think about. Because I think we're too quick when we want 100% agreement over unity, then that's going to create a division because we want people to see things our way. And no matter how strong we feel about something, the biblical support we may have, the research we may have, we have different lenses.
Right.
Yeah.
And while we submit to God's word, unity is what drives that, not to agree. And so what happens in a relationship when we can say, hey, I'm going to support you, even though I don't agree? Here's what else it invites. It invites an environment where you go, well, help me hear that. Share with me why you see it differently.
Yeah.
And we may experience the shift ourselves. I think Ephesians 4 is just a great is a great verse to land on because we see three things. It says speak. So if there's an environment where you're present, you're going to communicate. It says speak truth. Well, we got to be honest. I'd rather go clean right now and be mad because of what just happened.
I'm much better at cleaning when I'm mad.
You get more done.
I think that's why it makes me mad sometimes. Just kidding.
But we got to be honest.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we speak truth in love. My goodness, to know that no matter what we share here, that we're going to be loved, we're going to be accepted, that in that presence, when the morning time rolls around and we sit there with our coffee, and even if we don't say anything, it's just that reminder, hey, we're here and we're drinking this coffee together. We may want to go into another room or we may want to go be by ourselves, but just these few moments where I'm going to stay here because all is good and all is really loving. We're going to close it out. Any final thoughts before we close it and kind of give the teaser for what the next episode is going to cover?
And the only thing I would say is give it a shot. Don't be afraid. Let's both of you come together. If you're the husband that's listening to this podcast, encourage your wife to listen to it and vice versa. If you're the wife, have your husband listen to it. But I think the unity piece, strive for unity. Satan wants the opposite. God wants unity because it reflects his image. And so give it a shot. Take a risk.
Yeah.
And go for it.
So I'll drop the teaser. Shame just doesn't affect how we communicate. It affects who we believe we are. And who we believe we are determines a lot.
Yeah.
Man. So a lot.
That was it. I dropped it.
Yeah. So a lot to look forward to. We'll leave you with this. Don't force the vulnerability, but lead out.
Yes.
With no expectation of it being given in return. No gotcha moments. I think sometimes the truth is, let me drop the truth about you rather than me. And then if there's any kind of concern over emotional or physical vulnerability in the connection, meaning it just doesn't seem like we can get away from the outburst and I don't feel safe, then that's where we always encourage a couple, get help.
Yeah.
Get help. It's not okay. There are biblical drivers for love and forgiveness, but should definitely be in a safe environment. And sometimes it's going to take someone else stepping in and getting the help that we need. Until next time.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to the Christian Family Life Podcast. Be sure to subscribe. To learn more about the ministry, visit our website at christianfamilylife.com. There you can subscribe to our newsletter and find all the social media links where we offer resources to help strengthen your marriage. Until next time, remember, God created marriage. He can make it work.